Hey, happy carnival season, everyone. We're back. Another episode of NewOrleans.Football podcast. Happy to be here today. We're going to get into this last game of the season, Saints versus Panthers. What does it mean for Dennis Allen if the team finishes 4-0? Who is the MVP of the season? And what are we watching for in this game as the season comes to a close? We're going to touch on all these things and a whole lot more. And as always, we are coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio, and we are presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is not for the thin skin. Look for it in your favorite bars, restaurants, and stores. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review, BADEAUXlaw.com. And of course, check out our guys, Firehouse Subs, Veterans Boulevard location. Great food, great people, do a lot for the community. All right, let's get into the show. All right, welcome back. Another episode of the NewOrleans.Football podcast. Here with my guy, Mike Triplett. And before we get into anything, a little bit of NOF news. Just shout out to our guy, DJ. He took off this week to move back to Miami to run his company, Skindom, with his girlfriend. So check them out if you need skin products. They got great stuff. They make great products and great people behind it. So make sure you're supporting them. And just shout out to DJ. Man, he did a lot for our company. He helped with our brand aesthetic. He kind of helped us get our social profiles going and just kind of helped us develop a tone and everything. So his contributions to the company, just greatly appreciated.
I wouldn't have been here if he didn't help you, make it look so good.
So the Twitter videos, the graphics and all that, that's how we got you. All right, yeah. We'll take it though, man.
I was like, shoot, this thing looks like the real deal. Maybe I'll go over there.
He definitely did bring us into like the next era of the site though. So that was huge for us. And thank you to DJ, man. You always got a spot here with us. Just make sure you come back, check us out whenever you're in the city and sit in on an episode, whatever. Much love to you guys and to Tracy for letting you be around throughout the season. So we appreciate all that. And then the other good news, Damar Hamlin is he's talking, he's breathing. It sounds like all signs are positive. I'm very grateful that we aren't coming on here with a heavier tone around that. I think there's still a lot to go as far as like the normalcy of his life and everything, but he's alive, and it sounds like he's gonna be, at least he has his brain function. He's starting to breathe. Like all that stuff just sounds really, really good right now. Everything heading in the right direction.
I think that's from what we're seeing reports out of Buffalo, I think, so heartening to his teammates, but I think it's true of locker rooms everywhere. I mean, we spent all of Wednesday talking. It's a tough transition for us to be like, all right, can we talk about Saints Panthers? When is it okay? Obviously Tuesday, we didn't think it was the right time, and I'm glad everybody understood. that.
I wasn't in it. Like I wasn't ready to talk about it. It just didn't feel right, and just your head's not there. I mean, when stuff like this happens, like, yeah, we're just observers, all of us, everybody listening to this, but it kind of makes you think about what you're watching too. Yeah. And it becomes a little bit, the tone of it, everything is different. And I still think this is an event that changes how football is viewed a little bit. Like, how narrow it can be now. Yeah. And you always know, but then when you actually see it and it's just like, wow, like you're actually thinking like, did this person lose their life on the field? And what am I watching? Like, that's heavy. And that's something you have to process. And we definitely felt that in the locker room this week talking to these guys.
Well, that's the thing the same transition we're talking about is what the Saints have to come to grips with, what the Bills and the Bengals have to come to grips with. They are going to play these games. And I can't imagine how you do that. And there were some really good conversations about that. So, the one good thing that I liked is there was a lot of really good comments coming from people about how precious life is and how they realize that and how this brought that home to them a little bit. Maybe put the things that they're talking about in perspective, and the way that you really got a sense of the NFL brotherhood community. Like those aren't just words, the way they rallied around each other. So those are some of the better things that came from it. But obviously really, really tough and really tough to move on. And, I mean, we're going to talk about a game that really is unimportant because it doesn't mean anything. But, in some ways, I think a lot of this feels, I wonder for them and definitely for us, like how much gravity to give a Week 18 game,
Yeah. But look, they got to play it. And look, I think it's an important game for the Saints this week. And this is a chance for them to go into the offseason on an extremely high note. I think they've played those notes well enough that they're going to feel that way regardless.
Yeah.
But finishing that 4-0 mission, I remember Pete Werner said it, and I read the comment. It's like he's coming back from injury. He says, like we need to finish the season 4-0, and we're going to do that. And like I kind of like laughed at him to myself. I'm like, come on, man, you guys are not finishing this season 4-0.
Same comment with Cameron Jordan when they were 4-9, which is the worst they've ever been since Sean Payton and Drew Brees first arrived. That's the only time they've ever been 5 games under 100. And Cam Jordan said, "Is this the worst season I've ever had? Not if we win the last 4 games. It wouldn't be the worst season I've ever had." And I had the same thing. I was probably like, "Oh, that's a good one." And then, but here they are, 1 win away from that. And if they do finish 8-9, I think everybody looks at this season as like the bottom dropped out season. But there will be. I should have counted before I said. How many times did they finish 7-9? 5 times in the Peyton Breeze. 5 times with Breeze at quarterback. They finished 7-9. So if they finish 8-9 this year, they finished 9-8 last year. And we were trying to argue why Sean Payton might have been the coach of the year. They had a 5-2 head start. This year they were 1-3.
Look, I'd kind of rather be finishing like the Saints than the Miami Dolphins, for instance. Like the bottom really came out on their season, and they started out hot and they disappeared. At least the Saints have some momentum going into the offseason. And look, yeah, Miami had a lot of injuries, and there's a lot of factors going into it. The Saints had a lot of injuries too. So I mean, it's kind of similar seasons, and at least you're ramping up. Like they're talking about firing McDaniel in Miami now, which I think would be insane too. Yeah. Like he had a solid season. There's a lot. I
would trade
injuries.
Sean Payton for him to bring some offensive ideas into the fold here, though. Like I could give up the well, I still want the first round pick to cover this offseason, but we'll take Mike McDaniel here if they don't want him there. I'd like to cover some of those unique ideas.
Yeah, give me the Shanahan offense. I think it's the best offensive system in football. And yeah, that would be incredible to have him around calling the offense, all that stuff. It would be 100%. I would take that over anything. And it kind of goes back to like the Sean thing. Like I think coaching is more important than any one individual player. Like no matter what I don't care who they are, unless it's a franchise-changing quarterback.
Yeah, I could have a quarterback coach argument with you.
Definitely,
if we want to spend the hour talking about that.
Definitely give me the quarterback. A good like a legitimate franchise-changing quarterback makes bad coaches look good sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But barring that, like I think a good offensive mind, a good defensive mind, people just running your systems. Like Brian Daboll, like. He's someone that took them and just completely changed the Giants, by being good at his job. So if you have those good ideas in the building, I think that goes a long way. I love that offense.
I think everybody would have said Mike Vrabel was the best coach in the league until all of a sudden he was trying to win with Malik Willis, and now they might miss the playoffs. So you need both. You need both. And that is a reminder of
that scheme, though, man. Like they got Brock Purdy like looking legit.
But
like that scheme is special, and I think having that in the build, I would take that. If you told me, okay, you can have Kyle Shanahan's offense and having it run perfectly throughout. I don't know if McDaniel's actually the guy to run it perfectly. I haven't studied them enough. But if you tell me you have this system and it's run perfectly, I would take that over the 11th best player in this draft, like every single time.
Yeah, except for the Saints have Sean Payton's offense with his longtime offensive coordinator who helped to build it. Like you're saying, you need Kyle Shanahan too.
I don't know if you need Kyle Shanahan. It could be Mike McDaniel. You could be the right guy to play it.
This is proof of how much that matters. I mean, but the point that's driven home is we're sitting here saying what's more important, and everyone's expectations for the Saints are so high and their demands are so high, and they lost Sean Payton and Drew Brees over the last 2 years. It's kind of a miracle they aren't even worse.
Yeah, look, I think like Sean's offense was like maybe comparable to what Kyle's offense is now 10 years ago, and it's been 10 years since, and like the league has evolved. Like Kyle's offense is ahead of everybody kind of right now, and that's what they're mimicking. They're trying to catch up. I don't know that the Saints have been on the cutting edge for a while. And so, I mean, that's maybe the little bit of a difference, but 100% I would take that, man. If you told me, like, there's a lot you can do. I think you get a lot out of these players. Like Rashid Shaheed, like in that type of offense with the motion and the handoffs, and you're getting him into more creative plays, and he can make people miss ability a little bit. I think that's a great way to use that. I don't think Alvin's going to stagnate in the backfield, throughout the whole season. If that's the offense, they're going to move him around. I think there's just a lot of ways that offense would use these people's skills. And look, they've been stealing their running plays too. Like they have this play called Zorro that they run that they stole from the 49ers. So there's influence there already. I would love to see it, but yeah, I guess you would have to really put a name on the player, but 10th pick, 12th pick, 15th pick.
I know.
If you give me scheme and coaching, I think it's that I think it's that important. I really do.
Well, that's not realistic to actually get Mike McDaniel, but I mean,
maybe
look,
it is. Maybe he gets fired.
we're about to start talking in the offseason about, I mean, less about Dennis Allen's job security. That feels like a done deal. And we're going to start talking about whether Pete Carmichael has to be at the forefront of some of these changes or whether he gets replaced. But from a coaching standpoint, does a 3-game win streak in December shape your opinion of the job these guys did any differently than kind of how you felt about them at 4-9? I mean, the bottom didn't drop out. That would have changed things. But I'm saying, like, did they show you something in 3 wins against Cleveland and Gardner Minshew? I mean, and Atlanta that they barely won. How big of a difference does that make for you viewing DA?
I think it's significant for me, honestly. And it's not even just that the results help. You lose the games, it's kind of hard to see the details a little bit because it's just a complete dumpster fire then. But the fact that he kept the team together. And I know people like, he doesn't get credit for that. Like it should be the paychecks and everything. Yeah. I think he does. I think he gets credit for it. I think after coming out of that bye, there was a chance for the season to just really fall apart. I think after the Pittsburgh game, there was really a chance for the season to fall apart, and it didn't at either time. So I think that's significant. But a lot of the stuff that we were harping on, the mental mistakes, the stupid stuff that they were doing to keep shooting themselves in the foot, they weren't doing that at the end of the season. And I think that matters. There were a couple penalties here and there that I still think got to get cleaned up. Everybody has a couple penalties here and there that got to get cleaned up. So it didn't feel like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back like it did early in the season. Oh, they get a first down. Up, there's a false start. Up, there's another false start. It just wasn't that style of football. That was actually Philadelphia last week doing the stuff that the Saints used to do. So they stopped doing that. He cleaned it up. Those are the little things that I kind of felt like, man, the details aren't right. You aren't getting through to the players. You aren't punishing them enough. There's not accountability. Like he kind of killed the ability to even think about those kind of things later in the season. So that stuff, I give him credit for that because it showed that there was a problem. He figured out how to fix it, and the team responded to the fixes. So, credit to him for that. I think there's still a lot of stuff he's got to do during this offseason. I think there has to be like a really honest evaluation of this stuff worked, this stuff didn't. How do I fix it? What do I do in training camp? How do I get their attention? How much harder do I press on the vets? There's still a lot of things that I think he has to go into the offseason and figure out. But the fact that he showed me that he could fix a few of the things at least opens the possibility of, all right, what if he fixes this? How does that change? But there is still a lot of work to do for them to get to where they need to be as a coaching staff.
Yeah, that offseason stuff is without a question. I mean, I felt that way in August and September. I think we talked about maybe on our first pod that we know next year the preseason is going to be later. Should you play your players more? Should training camp be tougher? There's no question once they started 1-3 that is going to dominate this offseason talk. There's no doubt they don't get a free pass for that. What I'm a little torn on is I don't think this could be either the case for the coaching staff or the case against the coaching staff. I don't think they did anything drastically different in these wins. I know a lot of people were saying like, oh, that was Pete's best game plan of the season, that 15-play drive to start the game. And I'm like, it wasn't like he did anything different. They just converted all the 3rd and 4s. Like it was run, 3rd and 4 pass. They got a first down. Run, 3rd and 4 pass. They got a first down. Previously in the season, it was, either run, incomplete pass or run, false start, incomplete, long pass. And
they had
Taysom
it was like, involved a little bit earlier, though.
What's that?
They had Taysom involved. Like some
well, they sort of did, but Taysom had 4 carries on that drive, and 3 of them were the 13th, 14th, and 15th play of the drive when they finally got down to the edge. So what I'm saying is,
relative to the Browns game, though,
what they kind of get credit for is they stuck to their conviction. And this really came through on defense. And I thought when DA was kind of feeling himself in Monday's press conference and he was taking a little bit of a victory lap, he was saying, this is what happens when you don't panic, when you're not getting the results you want, because you believe in a system that's worked for you for years and you believe it's going to work and the players believe in it. And he said, And you really saw those results on defense. And look, that was a column I wrote heading into the Tampa Bay game, which was the thing that we need to see from DA is his defense being special, because his defense is a special defense is what got him hired in the first place. And I think we've seen his defense being special again. And he didn't do it by saying, God, I need to change everything. He did it by saying, I know this works. Let's do it right. And he got some of his players back. But it wasn't because he panicked or he tried this and then he tried that and then he tried this. He was like, I swear I know this works. And to see it finally work was kind of a reminder that, they weren't that far off all season. They could have won the Minnesota game. They could have won the Tampa game. They could have won the Cincinnati game. But at the same time, they could have lost the Cleveland game. They could have lost the Atlanta game. I mean, this is a team that is hovering. I mean, 8-9 is probably, if they win, the right record for this team, because there's some that they barely won and there's some that they barely lost.
I think that's fair. Look, the one thing I would say about the offenses, and I'm not a guy that's like, I usually roll my eyes at people that say, the play calling stupid and this, because like I'm not smart enough.
Oh no, the play calling has been bad this year. That's a fair. I hope nothing I said sounded like I was saying the play calling has been great this year.
No, but I mean, a lot of times when people say that, I'm just like, why? Like, you don't know, you can't explain it. Like, I wouldn't be able to explain what you're seeing. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And we kind of study the game a little bit, and I think it's just like an offhanded remark that people make. But this year, for sure, there have been a lot of times where it's like, what are they doing? Like, some of the stuff defies a little bit of common sense in certain situations. So that's got to be better. Like, they stuck to their guns. I do agree that they hit on plays this last game. And as you said that, like, it was 13th play of the game. And then against the Browns, it was like 20th when they finally got to taste them. Yeah. But like stuff like that, even, why is it taken to the 13th play of the game? Like, just do it earlier. This is what you should be. This is what you should be. Like that wildcat look where they're shifting back and forth. That should be a primary part of your identity.
I think it's become that.
Yeah, I
think the Cleveland game kind of made them realize how much they like it.
Like, it should be, though. Like, why is it taking this long to get to that? These are the two pieces you have. Do that, and then hit your plays down the field to Olave and Shaheed. Like, it shouldn't be as complicated as they're making it to be, I don't think. I think there's a simplified way of running some of this stuff, and sometimes I think they overthink it a little bit, and then it's just like they've never found the pocket of the identity all year long. And I know losing Jameis and then going to Andy probably changes a lot of what you want to do. But again, that's a choice. So if you're making the choice, figure it out. Like, just get these guys on the field together. And speaking of that, they're out of the playoffs. Jameis Winston's under contract for next year. Is it the right decision to not play him?
Well, it's the right decision to not play him at this point if you know you want to cut him this offseason, because you don't want him to get an injury and then the injury guarantee kicks in. It's the same thing we're seeing with Carson Wentz and Derek Carr being benched late in the season because they're going to move on from those guys in the offseason. That part of it, though, I don't know if it is the right decision. I want it. I like what Andy Dalton's done, and I'll defend the choice of going with boring Andy Dalton with his low upside in a vacuum. But when you have Jameis Winston in the building and you have an offense that needs more oomph, I can't believe there wasn't a time where they didn't want to test it out, see if he's learned from watching the things the offense has done well and the things that offense has done poorly. He's gotten healthy now. I'm stunned, surprised. I would have done it differently. But I think it's clear that they've decided we like Dalton and that style better than Jameis and that style. And the fact that Dalton will be cheaper than Jameis next year, probably, or at least the same price, there's no question that it's Dalton or something else next year. I don't think Jameis is even in their consideration next year.
Yeah, it seems like the ship has sailed there for sure. And that's an interesting point, too, about the injury risk if something happens. It's definitely something you have to think about the financials at this point, if that is the way you're going. And then also, if the door's open for Andy next year, I don't think you go away from it at this point. When you go to talk to him, he needs to feel like, it was his job. If you plan on rolling back to him, you can't turn away from him at the end. Having said all that, still want to see what Jameis can do. I still want to see it. At some point, I would have probably went back to him this season. It's a disappointment to me to not see it. Just my curiosity the whole time. And we've talked about it 100 times, so we're not going to belabor the point here. But man, the two wide receivers they're running with are perfect for Jameis. I just want to see him just take shots down the field to these guys. I want to see some instant offense. I'm sick of the 15-play drives. I just want to see someone hit some home runs.
We're talking about how, how good the play calling looked. Andy Dalton had to start 13 of 13. That's what he started in this last game to make the play calling look good, because that's how. I mean, now they do throw in a deep shot, whether it's Dalton throwing it or Taysom throwing it to Rashid Shaheed every other game, but. And he can get the ball down the field. But you're right. Look, we all want to see it. And I'm going to be disappointed when Jameis goes somewhere else. And look, I don't know what this is going to mean for Jameis's career. He's going to have to accept a backup job somewhere, I think, this offseason, just because we've talked about the supply and the demand. I suppose he could start as someone's starter while they're grooming a young quarterback, and maybe he catches fire and turns into the next Geno Smith. But I know it seems crazy for anyone who's given up on Jameis Winston, including the Saints. But even though the guy has been in the league for 8 years now, I still feel like I feel like the Geno Smith concept is completely possible for him. I feel like there's so many reasons why he hasn't had his best opportunity to look good. Certainly in New Orleans, he was injured. He tore his ACL last year. He broke his back and tore ligaments in his foot this year. And injuries aren't always an excuse, but there is a best version of Jameis Winston that we haven't seen yet. And I'm disappointed that we didn't get to at least see it and be like, yeah, that didn't really work before they moved on. They're moving on because they don't think it will work.
Yeah, I don't know if it would or wouldn't, honestly.
Yeah.
But I want to see it. I want to find out on the field. The other thing this week that's kind of interesting, and he probably shouldn't have told us this early in the week, but Paulson Adebo said he's not going to be playing this week with the hamstring injury. He said he got through the game, adrenaline cooled off, and then he
what's at stake in week 18. Players don't mind saying, I'm not playing this week.
Yeah, I think it was just a mistake. I don't know. But hey, we're happy that he told us. We know early on Alontae Taylor is going to be playing. I don't think we need to go down that path. We've talked about that a million times so far this season, but
I do want to go down that path.
All right, go ahead.
Because the next game they play is going to, they know that unless they do something this offseason with their personnel, they will go into next year with Marshawn Lattimore, Bradley Roby, Paulson Adebo, and Alontae Taylor, and one guy won't be playing.
Well, that's why here. That's the aspect of it that I wanted to get into. I don't think we need the Adebo. We don't need the Adebo versus Taylor on the outside. I think we're both Taylor guys. We're both Taylor guys right now until he shows he shouldn't be the guy.
But they don't get any more evidence. The next decision they're going to have to make is before they have to get under the cap by March. Do you trade any one of those guys? Or do you be like, no, I want all four, because look what happened at the beginning of this season after we traded C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We were instantly down to picking guys off the street. Do you go into this offseason saying, I love my top four cornerbacks? Or do you think 4 is too many? I've got a trade chip here.
Yeah. So the interesting thing this week, Chris Richard was kind of talking about it, and my thought process has been that Adebo doesn't have the hips to play on the inside. And I still kind of think he doesn't, and I don't know if you put him in there if that would be a successful transition. I don't know if he's the guy that I turn to for that spot. I could be wrong, though. I could absolutely be wrong on this. You just typically don't see 6'1", 6'2" guys with hips that take a while to turn on the inside, because you're against shiftier players that kind of make you go in and out, and they'll get your hips moving in different directions. But he pointed out Byron Maxwell and said that he does think Adebo has the ability to go in there and do it. So it could be him on the inside next year. However, when he was talking about Alontae Taylor playing on the inside, the answer was much longer and much more effusive. And it was like, all right, he played offense. He has the full vision of the field. He used to be a wide receiver. Yeah. He played quarterback before. He understands splits. He understands how everything fits. He has a global vision of the game. And he basically made it sound like that was kind of like maybe the guy. And then he's like, Paulson can do all that too. So, but the answer on Taylor was a little more interesting. I think his skills lend itself there a little bit more. The problem is like if Taylor's a better outside player, you don't necessarily want him on the inside. There's more value on the outside. So there's 3 ways that I think they can go about this. Taylor and Marshawn on the outside, Adebo on the inside, Taylor on the inside. Or the other one is you start with Marshawn on the outside, Taylor on the outside. And when you go to nickel, Taylor moves inside.
That's asking a lot of him. But yeah, that makes the most sense to me, except for you use the word effusive. Chris Richard said, while we're doing all this, don't shortchange Bradley Roby. And he said Bradley Roby is as gifted an athlete as Marshawn Lattimore. And look, he was complimenting all his guys and make sure he wasn't shortchanging his guys. And maybe we do think of Roby as the 4th. Although Roby versus Adebo is an interesting question. Roby, this defense has been playing great since he got back in the slot. Since they've had enough healthy bodies for Roby to be back in the slot, Roby made a big play down the field when they tested him against, I think it was A.J. Brown. I can't remember if it was Brown or Smith in this game, but Roby's been playing great too. So if you were to consider trading an Adebo or trading a Marshawn because of what you could get in return, then you would feel comfortable with that, with any of the other two guys on the outside and Roby in the slot. But yeah, I think they might just go with all four guys because they learned painfully as this season slipped out of their fingers that depth is incredibly precious in the secondary.
Yeah, like, look, you probably would have got a few more plays from Chauncey throughout the season if he was on the team. You would have got some interceptions, and that might have been the difference. It would have been the difference in winning a couple games. But pure coverage-wise, like, I think they've been relatively okay there. There was some ups and downs with Chris Harris, but like once they got relatively healthy, I think
and
that
Justin
they covered
Evans,
the slot pretty
remember,
well.
who started the year in the slot. I mean,
Yeah.
They've never been in trouble when those four guys are filling the three top positions. They were in trouble when 2 and 3 of them were, like, there was a time when Lattimore, Roby, and Taylor were all out at the same time. That's when they got in big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do there. And look, one of those guys could just be the odd man out too. If Roby keeps that position, like maybe just Adebo isn't playing, or maybe Taylor isn't getting a lot of snaps. But I think you got to find a way to get Taylor on the field. And
no question,
for whatever reason, they're still up on Adebo. And Richard basically said, like, we've seen him do more good things
for longer.
Yeah. So that's the guy there.
And I mean, they've all said that. DA, Nielsen, every one of them has had glowing praise for Adebo, even though he makes that kind of one high profile mistake every game, it feels like, or in some of these recent games. But obviously he's out there for 60 plus snaps a game, and they like the total body of work.
Look, he looked horrible on that reception, and he shouldn't have gave it up, and he shouldn't have fell off the route at the end. But the last 48 yards of that were on Daniel Sorensen.
Yeah,
he took a horrible angle of the ball, didn't make a tackle, was not in position to make a play. If you're the deep safety there, you can't be flat on it and be trying to you got to take a better angle of the ball. He misplayed it. The last 48 yards of that, I think we're on the safety. Sorensen had a really bad play in the running game too. They ran like a read option. If you pull up the clip, like, you just see him like on a horse, like basically darting to the sideline as the ball goes right through where he was at in the vacated spot, and they get a running play there.
I got to kill Daniel Sorensen. He had the big interception.
He did.
In Cleveland.
Look,
let him have his moment.
Look, he's had good moments. I'm just saying, just being
kidding.
fair to Adebo, the last 48 yards of that, and again, the coverage was not good. He shouldn't have gave it up. It was one of the weirdest plays you can watch too, because he stayed with him on the double move. He's up the field with him, and then just like the last 2 yards, I don't know if there was like some hand fighting that it didn't pick up.
And this is one thing where the broadcast probably gave you an even better look sometimes than the all 32. It was, Brown is a big dude and he had some leverage, but they were hand fighting just at the last moment. Brown basically just kind of had a whipping motion while their arms were locked together.
Okay, so that's why he fell off the route. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
He basically threw him to the ground, and it wasn't offensive pass interference because Adebo was trying to grab his, hand fighting. That's what it means. But A.J. Brown dominated an arm wrestling match and took him to the ground.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. The other thing that's kind of been interesting the last 2 weeks is it kind of feels like they've moved on from Marcus Davenport a little bit. He's no longer starting games. His snap counts significantly lower.
15 in this last game. In a must-win game.
Carl Granderson's making plays. It feels like they've moved on. What do you think that means for his future?
There's no way they're paying him now. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this being a huge dilemma, even if Marcus Davenport was playing very well. I think if he was playing at the same level he played at last year, they would keep him for sure, find a way to do it. Earlier this year, he wasn't getting the sacks, but he was still flashing on film and making some things happen. Can you pay for that? A guy playing 15 snaps behind Carl Granderson is not getting paid. Yeah. And so the only thing they can hope for is that he finally shows his potential in the next city and gets them like a 3rd-round comp pick in exchange.
Yeah, with their faces, they're telling us he's disruptive, he's doing all this good stuff. It's important. It's impacting games this way. With their actions, they're telling us that stuff doesn't matter enough, and you can't play him ahead of this other guy that doesn't have the same pedigree. Him falling off from last year to this year is one of the craziest falls I've ever seen. Like, he went from legitimately being one of the most dominant pass rushers in the NFL on a snap-for-snap basis last year, 11 sacks, and I don't know how many games. It was a limited number of games, all kinds of pressure. And then this year, the pressure numbers are still there, but they aren't impactful pressures. They aren't leading to as many incompletions. It isn't leading to other guys getting a lot of sacks. It's leading to him being on the bench. But the disparity between the two extremes, like it's unbelievable. And Cam Jordan had like a really fascinating comment 2 weeks ago where he basically said, we know he's got a lot of athleticism, but like you need to see more. And
no, well, he said sometimes he uses it too much, or basically, like relies on it too much, or like is overrunning plays. I can't remember the exact wording, but something that gave me the impression that it's a little unbridled or something.
Yeah,
like
basically
that.
he was saying you see a lot of athleticism, but you need to see more technique. And he's letting the athleticism lead him, and he's not being maybe playing necessarily under control. But a year ago he was.
It's crazy.
He was getting results. What
Remember
happened?
we were talking this offseason about how DA called him the best player on the defense.
And it was not an outrageous comment.
No.
Like that level of pass rush in the amount of games he had last year, it was crazy. His bull rush was insane. Like he got his finger fixed this offseason. Everybody on the team thought he was going to be better. He gained weight, and I know that was like a Twitter joke, but they thought the weight was going to make him more powerful because they didn't see him.
I think it hurt though that his injuries dominated his career. He hasn't had a lot during the season, but his injuries wiped out his entire offseason. And a dude that big who gained weight, whether he did it on purpose or not,
well, they
gaining
said he
that
did.
weight while not being able to be out there for her OTAs, mini camp, training camp, the same level of like, I think that really got him off to a slow start this season and maybe never caught up.
DA and Nielsen wanted him at that weight though. They thought it was going to make him be even more unstoppable. And they were all saying like, he hasn't lost any of his athleticism. He's still fast. He's still moving the same way, and he's going to overpower people. And this freak is going to be even freakier, and no one's going to be able to stop him. And oh, by the way, he got his finger cut off, so like now he can like punch people with his hand, and it's not going to be an issue. Yeah. And just none of it worked. None of it worked.
I still am. I'm going to invest in him when the stock is at its lowest for the Jaguars or whatever team signs him next year, because I think it's there. And people are always going to say, and they're going to lump him with Peyton Turner forever. I just had somebody last night say it to me. The biggest downfall of this team is the 3 wasted first-round picks on their defensive ends. I will say this: I never liked using 2 first-round picks on him. At the time, I didn't like it. That was one of like once a year I'll go into Twitter and I'll just go down the rabbit hole and I'll get into arguments. And I just kept saying, everybody's like, oh, they're going to have the 32nd pick next year. It's like a 2nd-round pick anywhere. I just don't like 2 first-round picks on one guy. But one thing I never doubted and still don't to this day was that he was worth the 14th pick in that draft. The upside was there, and we saw it enough times that I am okay that they used I don't like how much they paid for the 14th pick in the draft, but if they just had the 14th pick in the draft, I don't blame them for thinking this guy could be really special. And we saw it enough that they weren't crazy. They weren't making that up in their heads. He was worth being picked 14th in case he was Jason Pierre-Paul. And at times he was better than Jason Pierre-Paul. But, now Peyton Turner, who's almost a clone of him physically, and also came from a smaller level of play, is going to be lumped in with him. Why do they keep missing on these guys? I'm really curious to see. We've never seen the high. I'd love to see some of those glimpses from Peyton Turner. So far, Peyton Turner is more like Cesar Ruiz, and it better come together for him in the third year. 2
things. One, if Peyton Turner became Marcus Davenport, that would be a significant upgrade right now because they would at least get some good seasons out of him, and he'd be productive. He's not doing anything right now. 2, I'm not going to win this argument because we have all the data and everything right now. But where they were at and what they needed a pass rusher. There's no path to get one. If you sign one in free agency, you're overpaying someone and paying a significant amount of money. It's the same argument for why trading for Olave was a good decision. And Olave has worked, so no one's ever going to be like, oh, that was a bad decision.
It is very similar.
Yeah. So where they were at, they were a contender. It felt like they were a piece away from winning the Super Bowl. If he had been the right guy, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. It just turns out he wasn't. And for whatever reason, as good as Jeff Ireland is, and by the way, I think Jeff Ireland's stock is like going up because he's getting like the long tail on some of these guys like Caden Ellis at this point. For whatever reason, the drafting of defensive ends has been really not good. And maybe that's just because you have to take risks in the first round because everybody that you know is going to be good is so much higher. And now you're drafting in the second half or the bottom of the first round. So the guys you're drafting aren't as much as sure things. It's kind of like quarterbacks. If you're drafting a quarterback at 25, it's like maybe, it's a Kenny Pickett gamble, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But for whatever reason, man, it is. I'm saying this. I don't know if I believe in it because the scouting at Davenport.
I don't disagree. Yeah,
Davenport was.
I do
they got the athletic traits right. It was the guy.
Yeah,
the guy.
who else besides Peyton Turner hasn't panned out among their picks? And Trey Hendrickson eventually panned out too. But the thing that's about the Saints, for better or for worse, they like a type. They're not going to draft. Why am I forgetting TJ Watt? They're not going to draft TJ Watt because that's not the defense they run. And then what would they try to convert him to linebacker on this defense? You could say maybe they should play a different defense, but they want big DEs, they want big DTs, they want big linebackers to fit this scheme that has been one of the best defensive schemes in the NFL for the last 5 years. So if they see a guy that has the size and the athleticism, they pay up for him.
Man, if you can't make TJ Watt fit, you're running the wrong scheme.
I know, but you know what I mean? Like that's, and plus he went 30 years, he wasn't a sure thing, but no, I mean, sure, they probably would have drafted Von Miller or whatever, but to my point being that when they go all in for these guys and when they draft them higher than Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or, Daniel Jeremiah has these guys ranked, it's because their board is like, if you have these physical traits and this size, we like you even more than the average person likes you. So
yeah, look, just the thing on Davenport though, like the scouting of him, I think they nailed the athletic traits. They nailed the upside. What is impossible to know is this guy going to put it together and is he going to make it work? I don't think the issues with Davenport are talent. It's just the it's what Cam's talking about. Like, it's just and all of a sudden your technique goes away. Injuries was a huge issue. And then he's also talked to us over the years about his confidence and all that stuff. So like these are the things that are hard to gauge, but unfortunately Peyton Turner, that one has not worked as hoped, and they need to figure that out. And I'm not closing the book on him because we just saw the stuff with Caesar, but I'm looking at the book and I'm wondering, if the cover is telling the story on this one at this point.
Yeah, no, that's huge to their future because look, one debate we've had a million times is, should they blow it up? Should they rebuild or whatever? The best possible thing for any path that this team decides to take is that their draft picks from the last few years kick in, because if Cesar Ruiz and Pete Werner and Alontae Taylor continue on this path and then add in a couple late bloomers like Peyton Turner, then all of a sudden the cupboard looks a lot more stocked than it did even 3 months ago.
Here's the problem, though. You go into this offseason, Cam's at his age, you're probably letting Davenport go, and you need to add guys to your defensive end room, and you can't look at anybody right now. Any of these 3 first-round picks you've spent since 2018, you can't say, oh, well, we got Peyton Turner.
Yeah.
You're going into this saying we need a pass rusher.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's Carl Granderson, but you need something better than that too. So they're in trouble right now at that position, and these picks they've spent are doing nothing to help them. So now you got to spend against the cap, and you don't really have the cap space. So they have blown that. I mean, that was when you put 2 first-round picks in the Marcus Davenport, it should be a no-brainer. Like a different first-round pick, I might look at that and say, well, they got some good production out of him and they let him go and, whatever, not a total bust. But when you're putting 2 first-round picks into someone and the idea of signing them to a second contract isn't, oh, absolutely, you miss. That is a horrible miss. It sets the franchise back. There's no doubt about it.
I completely agree. And I think next year it is probably penciling Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson as the starters while giving Peyton Turner time and hope to develop, and then, whatever your Tano Passignones and your Contavious Streets are to fill in the mix, because you need to address defensive tackle even more. I'd be surprised if they bring back David Onyemata unless his market value has decreased to the point where he's like a Traquan Smith signing. I don't know what that'll be. And you could do better at the other spot. I mean, Shai Tuttle's good for the rotation, but they need somebody more dynamic defensive tackle. There's got to be major investments. And probably getting younger, too. I don't know that you go out and pay what the top free agents at those positions cost. This is why I wish they had more draft picks, because there's a lot of positions where they need to get better and younger.
Yeah, if they're trading Peyton and they get a first-round pick and it's not a quarterback, I hope it's a defensive end. Yeah. I hope it is. They need someone in the pipeline. They need better production there. It's an expensive position. And if it's not a defensive end, I hope it's a pass-rushing DT. And those are huge issues for this team. And if they found a way to address both of those and they just stayed the same everywhere else, I would feel significantly better about the team, because then I would actually believe that the defense could maybe offset some of the shortcomings in the offense. And then But still, I mean, there's a lot of work to do at some very high value positions, and the two highest value positions really at quarterback and defensive end. Like, you need answers there, and I don't know where they're going to find them. So they have to find a way to get some draft picks. All right, moving ahead. Last thing I guess that we can really get into as far as this game, and it's really the only question: is there anything that matters in this one that you're looking to see?
I mean, it's all the things we've talked about. I think winning their last 4 straight and finishing 8-9. I mean, if they finish 7-10, I know it's such a small thing, 8-9 or 7-10. If they finish 7-10, it's their worst record since 2005. If they finish 8-9, they had 5 worst seasons. It's crazy that's the line, but that is kind of interesting to me. I mean, if they win their final 4, the people who are still on this team next year, I think you kind of forget the order things went in. Like last year, we just talked about this team being a 9-8 team. I don't think people thought about, well, they were 5-2, and then they lost Jameis, and they finished 4-6. You know, like they were a 9-8 team. I think if you like, we were an 8-9 team despite all those injuries and despite our slow start and everything. I think that can add a confidence in what they're doing and a buy-in that matters. It's against Carolina, a team that has probably been the hottest team in the NFC South. Be nice to put them in their place a little bit. But I mean, none of these things really, really matter. But I think that stuff matters. And then the other stuff is some of the specific guys we're talking about. Alontae Taylor is going to get to start on the outside in this game. And I want to know what they're going to do with Trevor Penning. I'd start him. I shouldn't say I'd start him at left tackle. If he's not ready to start at left tackle, you made a really good point on the members only pod. Do whatever's best for Trevor Penning. But do what's best for Trevor Penning. Don't start James Hurst and Ryan Ramczyk to win. If Trevor Penning can get a start under his belt, do that.
Agree.
If they don't think he's ready, then don't set him up to fail.
It's the same thought process we have on the Jameis thing. Really, the only thing that matters to me is kind of, I want to see how they play. If they come out guns a-blazing in this game while already being eliminated, that tells me, and I think I have all the information I need, but that just further solidifies how this team is responding to the coach. So if they come out just world beaters and not flat, I mean, I think that says a lot in this game. If they come out flat, I think it says a little. It's something that I'd be looking at and be like, man, I don't like how they finish. Like that could take the wind out of the last 3 weeks if they come out and just lay a huge egg. If they play like they did the first time against them, I think that would be a little bit troubling. I don't think that's really gonna happen. Last thing.
Well, there's a couple things going on. This is the first time they've taken the field actually being eliminated from the playoffs, so that could take a little wind out of their sails. And the weirdness of this week and the gravity of this week, as we talked about, but. None of that stuff matters because we know what they're going to do. They're going to get off to a hot start. They're going to play great, and then they're going to start giving up a lot of rushing yards in the third quarter, and it's going to come down to a field goal one way or another.
There won't be the big
every game we've seen for like 9 weeks in a row.
There won't be. Someone has to step up with like the late game PI though. Like someone's going to have to do that.
Either they get the pick six from Sorensen and Lattimore, or they don't.
Last thing, just we kind of disagreed on this a little bit this week when we were talking about it. Just how do you feel like the league handled the canceled game? I wanted the 8 seed just to make this week more interesting, and it's selfish because it's the team. It's the team we covered. It would have made everything more interesting, and it would have just kind of been like a fun little quirk, I think. And it just makes a lot more games this weekend interesting and all that. And now that doesn't exist. I think they tried to. We'll see how the owners go with it too. It's still not decided at the time we're recording this. The one thing I absolutely just positively cannot stand is this idea of a coin flip. It is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I think if you're going to decide a coin flip on that, you need to decide a coin flip on some of the other seeding, like the Bills. If the Bengals win this game, then you should do a coin flip on all the seeding, every single thing. Then do it if that's going to be your method of it. I think that's idiotic. I think you should probably stick to what's in the rule book and just if the Bengals are the division winners. The thing that kills me though, if you want to flip a coin, go ahead and flip your stupid little coin. But if the Bengals lose that and they're playing on a road game, then they should have the second place schedule, and the Ravens should get the first place schedule.
And be the team that gets the 18th pick instead of the 24th.
Yes, all that. It needs to be tied to it. Tie it all to it, or tie none of it to it. Yeah.
You either won or finish second. Don't send me on the road, but tell me I get to hang a banner in my
It's absolutely idiotic.
Facility.
If you're playing at home, then you get the first round pick or the first place schedule. That's what it should be. Yeah. That is the stupidest. Like if you want to have this little bit of fairness and everybody eats a little bit of the turd or whatever, that's fine. But like the Bengals are getting more of the turd than anybody else on that.
Well, first of all,
because it could be the number 1 seed too. Like it's so unfair.
First of all, I am going to give the
They
NFL.
were winning that game.
I am going to give the NFL a little credit, and I don't say that lightly because I feel like the NFL I feel like they're missing the obvious commissioner. Like they need somebody in that building to be like, are you serious? Like 9 times out of 10. But at least this time, it feels like I could picture that they had like 10 people in a room, and then somebody said, yeah, but if we do that, then what about this? And they're like, all right. And because it was like contingency plan after contingency plan. And if this is the game, then it's a neutral site. But if this is the game, they deserve home field. And if this is the game, well, I at least applaud them for realizing somebody was getting the shaft in each situation and accounting for it. And then when you read it, you're like, oh man, the Bills really got screwed. All they had to do is win 2 games and be the 1 seed. Now there's no way they can be the 1 seed. Oh wait, the Bengals really got screwed. Oh, the Ravens really got screwed. Oh, the one team that didn't really get screwed is the Chiefs. But they did take a little something away from them, which is the Chiefs might have been the number 1 seed anyway. Now they can't host the conference championship game in Kansas City, which would have been a huge home field advantage. So the fact that all 4 teams took a little hit, it's at least a creative solution. But since it didn't seem to satisfy anybody, they should have just been like, we had a rule book in place just in case this came up. So we didn't have to sit here and let everyone make their case. It was written in the rules to cancel the game and just, have the winning percentage be the deciding factor. That would have been much easier. People still would have complained, but at least you would have been like, well, we should change the rule next year if you didn't like the way it turned out.
I agree.
Adding a coin flip did take it over the top.
It feels like that conversation happened, and then they got to the end of it, and they're like, the hell with it. I want to go home. They can flip a damn coin.
Flip.
Yeah, it was just like, it's not a good solution. But if you are going to flip the coin, everything needs to be the fate of all that. Yeah. That should just decide the standings. Okay, we're going to flip a coin between first and second place. That's what it should be. I still kind of feel like the best solution is that, okay, this game didn't exist, and then everything runs off a winning percentage. And like, that's kind of,
and that would have been really unfortunate, but
it's still unfortunate though. Cause like the Chiefs could still be the number. They might end this and be like, well, we should have legitimately been the number 1 seed. And then
they're 1 seed who can't host the championship.
It's just kind of like, all right, this thing's messy.
But you know what's going to happen.
That was the right thing.
The Raiders are going to beat the Chiefs. It's going to be way, way worse. Yeah. When the Raiders beat the Chiefs, all of a sudden people are going to be like, oh, this is terrible. We would have been the 1. Like the Bengals are going to be the 5 seed when they like legitimately could have been the 1 seed.
And the tough thing for the Bengals too, like you're telling them, okay, you won the division, but they go into week 18 and they don't have the option of saying, okay, we aren't playing our guys. And they should. They should have that option.
If they had beaten Buffalo, they could have done that.
Yeah. They could have. Yeah. But you're telling them right now that, oh, you win the division, and it's just like, all right, whatever. Anyways, I don't know. They should just stick with this in the rule book, in my opinion. Honestly, this just feels too messy.
I didn't like any of them. I mean, I suppose if there hadn't been a rule, I might have given them each a tie because in theory they could have stepped on the field and tied on purpose, which is. Remember that game at the end of last season?
Oh yeah, where teams could have tied
both
to get
teams
in.
Looked like they were agreeing to tie, and then was it the Raiders who were like, "Fooled you, we're actually going to win"? It was insane. Oh man, but look, it's a tough circumstance, and I don't think anyone can rightly feel like they complain about it. I actually haven't heard the teams come out and
the Bengals are trying to rally votes for them, and I think they should. They did
the right thing by saying, "Hey, we'll cancel this game, even though we're leading and your player got hurt." And but the fact that all 4 teams took a little bit of a hit, it at least isn't just. It's not like 1 or 2 teams. Like all 4 teams are probably sitting in their offices saying, "Well, this is unfair to us." So I guess in some way that makes it a decent solution. But.
Yeah, if you're the Bengals, though, I think you feel a little bit different about it. Like you feel like a lot got took from you.
I feel like the Ravens almost have the biggest complaint of all because the Ravens could have legit won this division if the Bengals had lost to the Bills, and the Bengals were favored to lose to the Bills.
They were winning the game. They could have been the number 1 seed. You're telling them you win the division.
That's why I'm glad we're not in charge.
Yeah. All right.
And I would not have added an 8th playoff team 2 days before the final week of the season. Like the Commanders are out here. The Commanders are out here using their like rookie day 2 pick at Sam Howell at quarterback, and then they were going to tell him on Friday, actually, if you win this game, you go to the playoffs. What? Why didn't anyone tell us?
The AC would have been fun though, man. It would have been a fun outcome, and it just kind of that would have felt like the way where you just kind of like, okay, well then nobody gets the bye or whatever. So and then it makes a little more. I don't know. There was some fairness to it. No matter what they did, though, like someone's gonna feel horrible about like the Eagles. Then would have been like, well, what the hell? Like this has
we
nothing
got
to
to
do
play
with us.
somebody now.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyways, we'll see what happens this weekend. No neutral site games for us here. We'll be back next week in the
Wait,
studio.
we got one more thing.
What do we
Team
got?
MVP.
Team MVP.
You teased it in
I
the
did
beginning.
tease it at the beginning.
You teased it in the beginning.
right.
I came up with this question. I still don't have my answer.
All right,
so
I got
I
mine.
need you to go first.
Caden Ellis. I'm going Caden Ellis. Yeah, he
Wow.
saved their pass rush. He's number 2 on the team in sacks. Arguably been the best defensive player on the team. I'm going Caden Ellis all the way.
Wow. And you probably had Pete Werner at the midseason.
Or Olave.
I think I had Alvin at midseason.
Alvin was in there too. Yeah. I don't think I can go
well,
with
it
either one of
depends
them,
if midseason was before. Like I remember we talked about this because for them midseason was it the 9th game of the season when Alvin had the 3 touchdowns and had been the guy that like rallied them in the locker room after Arizona. And at that moment it felt like, but yeah, he's tailed off a little bit. But yeah, Werner first half, Ellis second half, but Ellis wins the award. It's interesting. I don't.
All right, hold on, stop for a second. Hey, Brandon, slide it up. When Mike's on, I want to hear your guys too. Team MVP.
All right. So while I came up with the question because I thought it was a good question, then I realized I don't have an answer. And one name that popped into my mind that I dismissed because I didn't think he played enough was Eric McCoy. Because we saw how much they missed him when he was gone. And this team lived and died by its offensive line. And I was trying to think, so which offensive lineman would I give it to? Because Ruiz played really well for a while. And I'm like, well, McCoy, his 1-loss record, I don't have it in front of me, but his 1-loss record is probably really good. And he's the guy calling signals for quarterbacks who don't do that. So I think there's a strong case for McCoy, but I had kind of ruled him out because he spent 4 weeks on IR. And so I tried to think, and I think this is recency bias, but I think I'm going to give it to Cam Jordan because he has been there the whole time. He missed the 1 game with the fractured orbital bone, but he had 3 sacks in their biggest win of the season at Philly. He had 2 sacks in a gotta-have-it win against Seattle earlier this year. And we've talked about how everyone else on the defensive line has been mostly disappointing this year. Thank goodness they could still depend on the 32-year-old guy that wasn't playing at his all-pro level. But without him, I can't imagine how much worse this team would have been.
Who you got, Brandon?
I guess I'll have to go with Caden Ellis also. I mean, it was between him and Cesar Ruiz because, I mean, for all the stuff that Cesar Ruiz caught last year and the last couple of years, him being able to kind of silence all the haters and consistently play on that O-line and make some great blocks. I mean, it's either between, then you got Taysom too.
Taysom, I thought about Taysom.
Taysom's a good pick.
Taysom was important in every win.
Taysom's a good pick. Look, the other guy you could kind of throw on there, just like on the sense of they lost the game because he wasn't on the field and they won a game because he was on the field, is Marshawn. Marshawn's kind of weirdly
he
in there
played
too.
3 games.
I mean, he didn't show up at the Minnesota game, was kind of on him a little bit, but he has a weird little case too on, the whole like, oh, this guy not being there kind of like shows the value of him a little bit. It's a tough year for this though. And I think it's kind of like a 7-9 type of answer right here that it can go like 8 different ways.
I mean, Demario Davis made the Pro Bowl. I don't think it was Demario's best season, but he was on the field the whole time, unlike Werner and Ellis. So you give him credit for that. Olave is another guy who played pretty good all season long, but I don't think he wasn't winning games for them. We talked about Rashid Shaheed almost. It's like he did way less than Olave. It's about half the yards and even less than half the catches, but they felt like bigger impact plays. But so I guess part of it depends on, did you flash in the wins or were you a steady producer all season long?
All right. Well, I don't know if there is a sure answer to this one, but that's all we got for you guys today. We'll be back members only after the game and moving forward into the offseason podcast on YouTube, public channels, Buzzsprout, all that stuff is going to be just one time a week. So if you want 2 podcasts a week, sign up to NewOrleans.Football /subscribe. We'll have the members only on there every Friday end of the week. So appreciate all the support and we'll talk to you next week.